So I jumped the gun a little bit and talked about Claudia and the doll, so I'll move on to, oh gosh, one of the more despicable characters in the novel, Mr. Henry, the pedophile, along with the prostitutes. You know, you get the scene where Mr. Henry has the kids look for the money on him in his pockets and things, and you know, the parents get a real sense, or the adults in the room get a real sense that something's not right about this. You and I know what's going on here. He's a really nasty guy. We find out later that he molests one of the girls, and so we're not surprised. There's a little bit of foreshadowing there. He hangs out with the prostitutes, claims he's having some sort of a Bible study or something with a Sunday school thing with them or something like this. But all this does is it underscores the sort of the sexual dysfunction within the novel. Clearly there's rape, there's humiliation, shame involved with sexuality in the novel. There's almost no normal sexual relationship, romantic relationship in the novel. Something's wrong with almost all of them, and you see this going even with Geraldine. You get the sense that she and maybe some of the women who are like her don't really have, a normal, natural, healthy kind of life in that regard with their husbands. At least that's what Claudia presents to us, that they're not, it's not a big thing for them, or it's not an important thing for them as much as it is for their husbands. But the Mr. Henry thing and then the prostitutes, you get this real view that sex is a thing that you use to get what you want from people. So Mr. Henry uses the prostitutes and uses the children. Certainly all these prostitutes that Claudia and the other kids kind of hang around with give you a very jaded view of both men and of sexuality. One of them says the first time she had ever been with a guy, her mother says, "Did you get anything for it?" And she said, "No." And she said, "I didn't feel like I was owed anything." And the mom says, "The hell you weren't." So sex is a thing to be bartered and traded. It's a thing to be, and the view of these men that the prostitutes have is really low. I mean, you kind of don't blame them in some way, but they see them as despicable. They see them as people to be used, stupid, no regard for them at all. The only people that they do actually have regard for is the church-going African-American women. They actually have some respect for them, but that is what it is. The marigolds that I got up in the corner there, obviously they're planting marigold seeds. They want to sell marigolds and things. They want to be able to, to buy a bicycle with it. That's a central symbol of the novel too. So if you look at the blue eyes, you look at the marigolds, there's something going on with both of those in terms of symbolism there. Another character that's completely dysfunctional is Soaphead Church, who is a really odd fellow. And again, sexual dysfunction. He is just icked out, grossed out by sex of any kind, except the one type of person that doesn't gross him out, little girls, which is really, really weird and sick. There's no indication that he actually would do something physically with them, because I don't think he could bring himself to it. At least that's what the novel seems to indicate. But he does have some lesser disgust with, little girls, and can sort of identify with them or see them in some sort of the physicality of them does not disgust him like it does all other human beings of different ages, sizes, races, genders. He's totally disgusted by physicality at all. And his letter that he writes to God, on page 176, I don't even know how to describe it. You can't even describe it as hubris or pride. It's beyond that. It's a critique. It tells God all the things that God's done wrong, how he would have done a better job than God in all these different ways. And of course it leads to this sort of climactic event in the story, where he dupes Piccola into poisoning a dog that he finds particularly disgusting, and claims that if you do that, you'll get blue eyes, right? And then afterwards she believes she has blue eyes. She looks in the mirror and You and I don't see blue eyes, but she does, right? She has clearly sort of psychologically and mentally and emotionally snapped from that point on. Even in the last scene where we see her, you wonder what the dialogue is going on. That's the two sides of her. She's almost split. Her personality has split at the end of the novel. And she has a debate with herself, a conversation with herself, and then that final portion that's kind of important as well. The Geraldine section is worth looking at. I alluded to her in the previous video, but let's take a look at her, particularly when her boy just, basically throws the cat across the room and kills it, presumably. Junior essentially goads and provokes and hurts other children. He's more than just a bully. He's a sadist is what he is. And he acts out. Why does he act out the way he does? Why does he behave the way he does? Because he's so repressed by his mother, I think. Every one of these people belongs on a psychologist's couch. But Junior's no exception. Junior's going to be a real piece of work when he grows up. But on page 91 of the novel, when Geraldine finds out that the cat's dead, a cat that she seems to care more about, obviously, even than Junior. And so Junior's glad to see it die. He can't wait. And he can't wait particularly to cruelly blame it on this girl who is this sort of dirty, low-class, unattractive, awkward, not terribly bright girl, somebody that everybody projects their disgust and hate on. He does the same thing. She says, "What is this?" Her voice was mild, as though asking a perfectly reasonable question. "Who is this girl?" "She killed our cat. Look." He pointed to the radiator where the cat lay, its blue eyes closed. It's what kind of eyes? It's color of the eyes, blue, leaving only an empty black and helpless face, right? She looked at Piccola, saw the dirty torn dress, the plaits sticking out of her head, her hair matted where the plaits had come undone, the muddy shoes and the wad of gum peeping out from between the cheap soles, the soiled socks, one of which had been walked down into the heel of the shoe. She saw the safety pin holding the hem of the dress up over the hump of the cat's back. She looked at her. She had seen this little girl all her life, hanging out of windows over saloons in Mobile, crawling over the porches of shotgun houses in the edge of town, sitting in bus stations, holding paper bags and crying to mothers who kept saying, "Shut up." They sat crowded into pews at church, taking space from the nice, neat colored children. They clowned on the playgrounds, broke things in dime stores, ran in front of you on the street and made ice slides on the sloped sidewalks in the winter. "Get out," she said, her voice quiet. "You nasty little black bitch, get out of my house." Piccola turned to find the front door and saw Jesus looking down at her with sad and unsurprised eyes. His long brown hair parted in the middle, the gay paper flowers twisted around her face. His face. This is that picture of Jesus that they have on the wall. And at the end it says, the snowflakes falling and dying on the pavement. Right? A perfect emblem of what's happening to her. Her soul's being crushed by these kinds of things, slowly but surely, slowly but surely. Her soul is being crushed. Her humanity is being crushed out of her. But even the picture of Jesus looks down at her with sad and what kind of eyes? Unsurprised. That's a unique word. I think that's an interesting word. He's not. He looks down and he's not surprised by what he sees. He's not surprised by what these people are doing, I suppose. Get out. So she's projecting onto her all of the things that she's embarrassed and ashamed of about little girls of her race that she sees. I just can't stand it. Do you remember in the short story by Flannery O'Connor how Ruby Turpin was so disturbed and bothered and just hated white trash people? Couldn't stand them. Why is that? Because Ruby Turpin and Geraldine both think these kinds of people are bad reflections on me. And I hate them for what they are. I hate them that they're not better. I hate them that they embarrass me to be like them. I don't want people to think of me the way they think of them. I'm better. I'm different. They are a shameful embarrassment to me. And Geraldine hates Piccola. Not because of who Piccola is, but because of what Piccola is. She's a type of girl who's been overlooked by society, who's been impoverished. She's just, you and I sit there and say, she's just a little girl. She hasn't done anything to anybody. She didn't even hurt your cat, lady. But it's not who she is, it's what she is. And she hates it because she hates something about herself. There's that insecurity there. This, I think, is the heart, the very heart and soul of Morrison's novel. And this is what gives the novel such a profound impact on the reader, because it makes us say to ourselves, what is it that I don't like about this type of people? Because I guarantee you it's what I don't like about myself. One of the great quotes in the novel is down at the center of your screen there. Love is never any better than the lover. Wicked people love wickedly. Violent people love violently. Weak people love weakly. Stupid people love stupidly. But the love of a free man is never safe. That's a great line. Love is never better than the lover. You are never going to be better at loving someone than you are at being yourself. The measure of how well you love somebody or how you love somebody is entirely a function of who you are and how good a person you are. If you're weak, you'll love weakly. If you're violent, you'll love violently. Your love as an expression of who you are is going to depend entirely on who you are and the way you behave. And she says the love of a free man is never safe. It's never safe. Someone who's free. And I think she means free in the sense of unbound, untethered to any standards. A guy who does what he wants to, his love is not going to be safe. Some guy who says, no one can tell me what to do, that's a really dangerous kind of love. There's some other wonderful quotes there, I think, that are worthy of your consideration as well. But I want to focus on the very end of the novel here in the time we've got remaining, because it deserves some particular attention here. Of course, after all of these horrible things that happen, Piccola basically just loses it. And it's through the eyes of Claudia that we see what happens to the little girl she knows. And there's a warning here I think Claudia can't help but observe. There is a sense here of trying, as an adult, we presume, looking back on her childhood and trying to make sense of what happened to this little girl and why. And why didn't anybody do anything? Why didn't anybody say, oh, this child deserves better than this? Oh, this child needs to be helped. Or, no one cared. No one cared. And where she ends up spending her days as a child at the end of the novel, near the junk heap at the edge of town, is, as Claudia puts it, very appropriate, because we threw her away. We threw this child away. She was somebody of value and no one cared. And there's just nothing sadder in life than that a human being who could have had a beautiful and fulfilling life was just disregarded and thrown away, and the one life she had meant nothing to anybody else. It's just terribly sad. And it's one of the powerful things of the novel. Morrison's really good at this. She's not overplaying the emotional hand she has. She's letting you think about this. If you think that human beings have worth, have value, have merit intrinsically, how do you let this happen and stand by idly? Because it's happening everywhere. Everywhere. Not just in this town, not just at that period of time. It's happening all around the world every day of the week. And she makes us think about that. And the quote in the bottom right there, the ability of writers to imagine what is not the self, to familiarize the strange and mystify the familiar, is the test of their power. She wants you to get outside of yourself. She, as a writer, wants to imagine, and therefore have you imagine, something that's you're not familiar with, something that's strange and different to you, something you can't figure out. If she can make you understand something that's not familiar to your day-to-day walk in life, she's done her job, I think, is what she's getting at. So if we look at towards the end of the novel, where poor Piccola is basically, she's pregnant, she loses the baby, they want the baby to live, but of course it doesn't. It's the product of incest, probably all kinds of problems in terms of genetics, obviously. it may very well be a blessing that the child wasn't born, right? But we're not giving a judgment on that one way or the other. On page 190, we get this observation from Claudia. Our astonishment was short-lived, for it gave way to a curious kind of defensive shame. We were embarrassed for Piccola, hurt for her, and finally we just felt sorry for her. Our sorrow drove out all thoughts of the new bicycle, and I believe our sorrow was the more intense because nobody else seemed to share it. They were disgusted, amused, shocked, outraged, or even excited by the story of her pregnancy and losing the child. But we listened for the one who would say, "Poor little girl," or "Poor baby." But there was only head wagging where those words should have been. We looked for eyes creased with concern, but saw only veils. So as people realized what her father had done to her and what the consequences of that were to her and how traumatic that was, Claudia says we were looking for that one voice who would say, "Poor thing," and we never heard it. We looked for that one pair of eyes that said, look how important eyes are in the novel, that one pair of eyes that looked with concern and sadness, and we didn't see that. Nobody was. They were shocked, they were amused, they were embarrassed, they were outraged, all of this thing. I felt a need for someone to want the black baby to live, just to counteract the universal love of white baby dolls, Shirley Temples and Maureen Peels. We could pray, Frida says. Let's ask him to let Piccola's baby live and promise to be good for a whole month. Okay, but we better give up something, so he'll know we really mean it for this time. Give up what? We ain't got nothing. Nothing but the seed money, $2. We could give that. Or you know what? We could give up the bicycle, bury the money, and plant the seeds. All the money? Claudia, do you want to do it or not? And they do it. And they think, well, maybe the marigolds will come up. Do they come up? No, they don't. They die, right? They die just like the soul of Piccola dies. It didn't do any good because it was people that needed to help her, and people didn't do it. She has, in the next chapter, it's on page 198 and 199 is the section I'm looking at here before we get to 204, as the screen says. She has completely lost touch with reality. She is essentially a split personality. So this conversation is a conversation that Piccola's having with herself. And she says, well, she probably loved him anyway. Him? Why not? Anyway, if she didn't love him, she sure let him do it to her a lot. That's nothing. How do you know? I saw them all the time. She didn't like it. Then why'd she let him do it to her? Because he made her, right? She's talking about, these two halves of herself are talking about herself. How could somebody make you do something like that? Easy. Oh yeah? How easy? They just make you, that's all. I guess you're right. And Charlie could make anybody do anything. He could not. He made you, didn't he? Shut up. I was only teasing. Shut up. Okay. He tried. He just tried. See, he didn't do anything. You hear me? I'm shutting up. You better. I don't like that kind of talk. I said I'm shutting up. You always talk so dirty. Who told you about that anyway? I forgot. Sammy? No, you did. I did not. You did. You said he tried to do it to you when you were sleeping on the couch. See there, you don't even know what you're talking about. It was when I was washing dishes. Oh yeah, dishes. By myself in the kitchen. Well, I'm glad you didn't let him. Yes. Did you? Did I what? Let him? Now who's crazy? I guess I am. You sure are. Still. Well, go ahead. Still what? I wonder what it would be like. Horrible. Really? Yes, horrible. Then why didn't you tell Mrs. Breedlove? I did tell her. I don't mean about the first time. I mean about the second time when you were sleeping on the couch. I wasn't sleeping. I was reading. You don't have to shout. You don't understand anything, do you? She didn't even believe me when I told her. So that's why you didn't tell her about the second time? She wouldn't have believed me then either, right? Such a classic case of victims of this kind of thing telling people and having other adults not believe, which just folds that guilt and that shame and all those kinds of things back in on the victim. Just folds it back in and doubles down on it. It makes it even worse. At the end of the novel, we get Claudia's reflections on page 204 and 205, because as an adult, she has to try to make this make sense. Why did this happen? Why didn't anybody do anything about this? What does all this mean that this poor child was treated this way? And and never had a life. Never had a life. A little black girl yearns for the blue eyes of a little white girl, and the horror at the heart of her yearning is exceeded only by the evil of fulfillment, after the baby came too soon and died. The damage done was total. She spent her days, her tendril sap-green days, walking up and down, her head jerking to the beat of a drummer so distant only she could hear. Elbows bent, hands on shoulders, she flailed her arms like a bird in an eternal, grotesquely futile effort to fly. Beating the air, a winged but grounded bird intent on the blue void it could not reach, could not even see, but which filled the valleys of the mind. We tried to see her without looking at her and never went near. Not because she was absurd or repulsive or because we were frightened, but because we had failed her. Our flowers never grew. I was convinced that Frida was right and that I had planted them too deeply. How could I have been so sloven? So we avoided Pecola Breedlove forever. So there she is. She's got her hands on her shoulders, making her arms into like wing-like structures, and she just walks around day after day, wandering aimlessly, head turning one way, flapping her arms like wings of a bird that can never fly, because she can't ever fly. She says the bird-like gestures were worn into a mere picking and plucking her way between the tire rims and the sunflowers, between Coke bottles and milkweed, among all the waste and beauty of the world, which is what she herself was. All of our waste which we dumped on her and which she absorbed. Everything they hate about themselves they projected onto her, is what she's saying. All our beauty which was hers first and which she gave to us, all who knew her, felt so wholesome after we cleaned ourselves on her. We were so beautiful when we stood astride her ugliness. Her simplicity decorated us. Her guilt sanctified us. Her pain made us glow with health. Her awkwardness made us think we had a sense of humor. Her inarticulateness made us believe we were eloquent. Her poverty kept us generous. And she led us, and thereby deserved our contempt. In other words, we looked down on her. Everything that she was made us feel better about ourselves, and you know what? She never objected to it. She never objected to it. She goes on and says, and she led us and thereby deserved our contempt. We honed our egos on her, padded our characters with her frailty, and yawned in the fantasy of our strength. And fantasy it was, for we were not strong, only aggressive. We were not free, merely licensed. We were not compassionate, we were polite. We were not good, but well behaved. She's drawing a difference here that's so profound. It's different. Being strong and being aggressive are two different things. It's one thing to be strong. It's another thing just to merely be aggressive. They weren't free. They were licensed. Licensed means you can go do what you want to. Freedom is more than just the ability to do what you want to, right? It involves some sense of enlightenment and responsibility. We were not compassionate. We were polite. Politeness is just saying hello, please, and thank you. Compassion is actually caring about somebody. Politeness is just a formality. We were not good, we were just well behaved. There's a difference between being good and being well behaved. These are such important concepts. The last couple of sections which deserve our attention. Love is never better than the lover, right? As we saw at the bottom of the screen. There is no gift, she goes on and says, there is no gift for the beloved. The lover only possesses his gift of love. The loved one is shorn, neutralized, frozen in the glare of the lover's inward eye. We are a product of people who love us. We define ourselves by how we're loved, right? We do. That's an important thing. That's an important concept. We have our view of ourselves is shaped by how people love us and who loves us. So what happens to a little girl when no one loves her? She's empty. She doesn't have a definition of herself. In the final section, she says, I talk about how I did not plant the seeds too deeply, how it was the fault of the earth, the land, of our town. I even think now that The land of the entire country was hostile to marigolds that year. This soil is so bad for certain kinds of flowers. When the land kills of its own volition, we acquiesce and say the victim had no right to live. We're wrong, of course, but it doesn't matter. It's too late. At least on the edge of my town, among the garbage and the sunflowers of my town, it's much, much, much too late. That's a fascinating and important and moving passage that deserves your attention, because she's saying something. It's not a political thing. Does it have something to do with civil rights? Of course it does. But it's more personal and human than that. It's a deeper point that she's making about our very humanity. What does it say about us as a country, as a people, as a community, as a town, as a human being, just an individual, you and me, that we don't care about people like this? That we actually feel better that they're worse off than we are, because it makes us feel and look better in some shallow sense, that we take out our aggressions on these kinds of people. And we don't care about them. We throw them aside like they're garbage. It's a sad novel, and it's a disturbing novel, but it's a really, really important novel. And I hope you get an appreciation of it. And read some more Morrison, too, because she's really, I think, one of the best writers in the 20th century. Well, on to our quiz. We've got 3 quiz questions and a bonus. Okay. Number 1, what happens to Charlie physically, when he's rejected by his father? What happens to him physically when he's rejected by his father? Number 2, what does Soaphead trick Pecola into doing for him? Right? What does she? And he doesn't want to do it, so he has to get her to do it. Okay. How does Aunt Jimmy allegedly die? Okay. So Aunt Jimmy dies, and there's a theory as to what caused her death. You and I are going to think this is a preposterous theory. That's as far as I'm going to go. You tell me, how does Aunt Jimmy allegedly die? It's a little absurd what people think. And then the bonus question is, what does Maginot Line do for a living? Okay? Need these from you no later than Friday, August the 8th at noon. I'm posting this earlier than what I had said in the syllabus because some of you may want to finish this lesson early so that you can study a little bit more for the final exam. Remember to consult the final exam guidelines. Excuse me. And if you have some questions about it, email me. All right? Thank you.